Hello. Hey guys, can you hear me? Am I audible? Ravi, Aman, Venu, Venkat Sudhir. Hello, hello, hello. Hi guys, good morning. Okay, perfect. So let's get started without any further ado. In the last class, we have gone through networking fundamentals. We have gone through the basic introduction on what networking is, what networks are, and what are hosts. And then we have covered understanding IP addresses. What are the properties of IPv4 addresses? How do you convert any binary number to a human readable decimal number? Okay. And from that, we understood the range of IP addresses. What's the first IP? What's the last IP? And how many IPs do we have in total? Okay. Oh, let me record this session. Right. And we've also covered the sequence of IPs. What is the first IP? What is the last IP? What are the IPs in between? How do they progress one after the other? And then we have talked about the classification. What are the different categories of IPs? What are public IPs? What are private IPs? Today, we have to go with the ranges of each of these IPs, and we have also to learn what are classes. Okay. So now, before we begin, any questions or doubts, guys, up to this point? Anyone? Venu, Aman, Ravi, Venkat, or Lakshmi? Okay, perfect. So let's get started without any further ado. Apologies, a bit sick today. So in the range of IPs now, as mentioned in the last class itself, we have five categories called classes first. So class A, class B, class C, class D, and class E. And your entire IPv4 address range from the first IP 0000 to the last IP 255, 255, 255, 255. All of those are distributed among these five classes. Okay. And it's very important to remember these ranges, guys. Okay. This is a simple technique. Don't get confused by looking at these many numbers. All you have to remember is four numbers, nothing more. Okay. So again, class A starts at the first IP 0000, and this goes all the way up to 127, 255, 255, 255. Since it's ending at 127, class B starts at 128,000. So all these 255s cycle back to zeros, and the leftmost octet increments by one, as we learned in the sequencing of IPs yesterday. Okay, so let me use a point. Yeah, but so since it's ending at 127, 255, 255, 255, class B starts at 128.0.0.0. Okay, and from 128, it goes all the way up to 191, 255, 255, 255. Since it is sitting at 191, class C starts at 192. From 192,000, it goes all the way up to 223, 255, 255, 255. Since it's ending at 223, class D starts at 224. From 224,000, it goes all the way up to 239, 255, 255, 255. And since it's ending at 239, class E starts at 240. And from 240,000, it goes all the way up to 255, 255, 255, 255, the last time. Okay. So the only thing you have to remember are these four odd numbers. So if I just circle them out, 127, 191, 223, and 239. From these four numbers, you automatically get the range of the next class, the starting range. 0 to 127, 128, 191, 192 to 223, 224 to 239, and 240 to 255. On the left side, you have all even numbers. On the right side, you have all odd numbers. On the left side, you have all zeros in the ending three octets. On the right side, you have all 255s. Okay. So the only four numbers you have to remember are these four ending range numbers: 127, 191, 223, and 239. From those numbers, you automatically get the next class range. Okay. Now again, these are not random guys. There's a value called parity bit. So from that logic, you got these numbers actually. But we don't need to go in that depth to understand what that parity bit is. But you can do some research on it if you want to understand why we have specifically these ranges. Okay. Now, excuse me. Now, in each of these classes, again, there's a certain private IP range. Okay. So in class A between 0 and 127, there's a small private IP range from 10.
Brother, good job again.
Yeah, Venu, you were saying something? Your mic is unmuted. Any questions? Venu, Varala? Okay, right. So coming back to this, as mentioned, between 0 and 127, there's a small range from 10,000 all the way up to 10,255, 255, 255. Any IP within that entire range is a private IP. And any IP outside that range would be a public IP base. Similarly, in Class B as well, between 128 and 191, there's a small range 172.16.00 to 172.31.255.255. Any IP within this range is a private IP. Any IP outside that range is a public IP. Similarly, in Class C, between 192 and 223, there's a small range 192.168.00 to 192.168.255.255. Any IP within that range is a private IP. Any IP outside that range is a public IP belonging to the internet service providers. Okay. And in Class D and Class E, you do not have any private IPs at all. All of them are public IPs itself. Okay. To elaborate on this a bit more, if you take the example of Class A, it's the same in every class, but just elaborating with one example. In Class A, the range starts from 0000 and goes up to 127, 255, 255, 255. This is the entire Class A range. Okay. Now, in that entire Class A range, there's a small private IP range from 10,000 to 10,255, 255, 255. So any IP within this range is a private IP. IPs which you can use in your local home networks, organizations, in your intranet. Okay. And any IP outside that range will be a public IP. So outside the private IP range in the sense from 0000 up to 10, which is 9,255, 255, 255. And after this range, after 10, 255, 255, 255, we have 11. So from 11 up to 127, that's another public IP set. So in each class, in a similar fashion, you have a small private IP set and two public IP sets like this, one on each side. Okay, so that is how the IPs are being classified. Okay, now just to understand this even more better, we'll just perform a small exercise. I'll write down some random IPs. And looking at these ranges now, you have to tell me which IP belongs to which class and whether they are public or private IPs. Okay, so let me quickly write down some IPs first. Okay, okay, okay. So I've written down some random IPs here, guys. What I want you to do is look at these ranges over here and tell me which IP belongs to which class and whether it's a public IP or a private IP. So sorry, just give me 1 minute before that. Okay, so now let's get started. So as mentioned, now looking at these ranges, let me give you the answer for the first one. And depending on the same logic, you can give me the answers for the rest. Okay. So when you look at the first IP address here, 10.180.9.128. So to determine which class it belongs to, you just have to observe the first octet, 10. Where is 10 falling under? It falls between 0 and 127. So therefore, this is class A. Now, once you know that this is class A, you would look at this range specifically in class A. For an IP to be a private IP in class A, first octet needs to be 10, and the remaining octets can be anything from zeros to 255s. For an IP to be a private IP in class B, first octet, sorry, should be 172. Second octet can be anything from 16 to 31, and the remaining two octets can be anything from 0 to 255s. Similarly, for an IP to be a private IP in class C, first octet should be 192, second octet should be 168, and the remaining two numbers can be anything from 0 to 255s. So here we have the first octet as 10. That 10 seems to match. And the remaining numbers are anything from 0 to 255s. So therefore, this is a private IP. Okay, something which you can use in your local networks. Now, with the same logic, can you give me the answer for the next one? 192.160.10.20. Which class is this, guys? Class C. Perfect. And this is a public key. Why is it public? Because the first octet is 192. That seems to match. But the second octet is 160. Okay, which is outside the range. Hence, it's a public IP. Next one, 172.16.0.10. Perfect. Class C and private. Next one, 173, 173, 100.200. Any answers, guys? Class B and public. Perfect answer. Okay, others, I hope you're understanding as well. Abhinav, Aman, Ravi, Venkata, Sudhir, Venu. Any questions on your end, guys? Hello? Guys, can you hear me? Am I audible?
Hey, sure. Yesterday you said there is a because I'm finding it hard to remember these ranges. It's a lot of figures for me. So you said yesterday there is an easy way to remember all these ranges. Are you gonna teach that too?
Again, just those four numbers, Aman. So these four numbers is what you have to remember. That's the easy way to remember the entire class range. Private IPs, there's no method. You'll have to remember these by the numbers itself. It all comes down to practice. Okay. But the ranges of classes, as mentioned, the easy method is remembering these four numbers. That's it. Okay. 127, 191, 223, and 239. From those four numbers itself, you can remember all the other entire ranges. Okay. Is that clear? Come on. So these are the four numbers you'll have to
Yeah.
memorize that. Okay. Right. Moving on. 1 second. Yeah. So moving on to the next IP. Where is this? Yeah. Over here. So next IP 192.168.0.5. Any answers on this? Which class does it belong to and whether it's public or private? Yes. Correct answer. Well, actually, class C and private. Next. Class A, correct. Public. Perfect. Next, class E and public. Perfect. Because in class D and E, you don't have any private IPs in it at all. Next, perfect. Next, class B, public. Perfect. Next, perfect. Okay, so that is how you would categorize these IPs by looking at these ranges. And this is quite important because in the upcoming sessions, when we work with our again logs, various device logs or your firewall logs, or when you perform network analysis or packet analysis using tools like Wireshark and so, you'll be seeing a lot of IP addresses there. So as soon as you look at an IP, it's very important to distinguish whether it's a public IP or a private IP and which class it belongs to. Okay, because from that distinguishing factor, you can know where the attack is being initiated from. If you see the log of an attack coming from a private IP, it means the attacker is in your own network, in the same network as you. If it's coming from a public IP, it means the attacker is from the internet. So the attack is coming from an external network. Okay. So understanding which IP belongs to which category is very, very important. Okay. And that will only happen with practice, guys, once you memorize these private IP ranges and the entire class ranges. Okay. To memorize the class ranges, as mentioned, the only thing you have to remember are these four numbers: 127, 191, 223, and 239. Because from these ranges, you automatically get the next class range: 0 to 127, 128 to 191, 192 to 223, 224 to 239, and 240 to 255, the last time. Okay, so you have to remember these four numbers. Okay, and private IPs, you'll have to remember the ranges itself directly. And you will easily remember these because you keep coming across these IPs a lot, guys. Okay. In my home network as well, if you check now, I'm getting the IP. If I open up my command prompt and if I type ipconfig, you see I get the IP 192.168.0.5. Okay. What is that IP? That is nothing but a private IP. And which IP, I mean, which class is it falling under, guys? It's falling in the class C range, if you notice. 192.168.00 to 192.168.0, sorry, 255.255. That is where the private IP is falling under in my home category, as you notice. Okay. Now, the very important question to answer: why do we have five separate classes? Why not just one single class with some public and private IPs? It would have made our job a lot easier. I wouldn't have had the necessity to remember these many numbers, right? So the reason is each class has its own properties, guys, and different network sizes. Okay, let me elaborate on that. So class A over here has one network portion and three host portions. Class B has two network portions and two host portions. Class C has three network portions and one host portion. Class D and E have all network portions itself. There are no host portions in them. But what do I mean by this? What do I mean by network and host portions? Okay, let's talk about that. So as you're progressing down the line, network portions seem to be increasing in number. Class A has one network portion, Class B has two network portions, Class C has three network portions, Class D and Class E have four network portions. Okay. Now to understand what these network and host portions are, let's take the example of Class C first, where you have three network portions and only one host portion. Okay. So in class C, the private IP starts at 192.168.0.0. We all remember that. So 1 second. Let me open up my notepad file again. So I've written down that range over here, guys. Yeah. So if you remember, the class C private IP range starts from 192.168.0.0 and goes all the way up to 192.168.255.255. Okay, that's the entire private IP range for class C. Now, in that range, the first three octets are network portions. So the 192, 168, 0 belong to the network portions. And the last octet here belongs to the host portions. Okay. Now, if you remember the sequencing from the last class, after 00, We have the next IP 01. After that 02. After that 03. Then 04. Then 05. Then 06. Goes all the way up to 0255. After 0255, you have 10, 11, 12, 13, which goes up to 1255. Then you have 20, which goes up to 2255. We learned the sequencing in the last class, right? Excuse me. I'm sorry about that. I'm terribly sick. So now, as mentioned, so when you talk about this range here, guys, so whenever there's a change in the host portion, what it indicates is a change in the host. What I mean by that is the 0.1 could be given to my Wi-Fi router. 0.2 could be given to my mobile phone. 0.3 could be given to my laptop. 0.4 could be given to my smartwatch. 0.5 could be given to my smartphone, another phone, let's say. Okay, 0.6 could be given to another phone or another laptop or another TV or whatever it be. Okay, so each change in the host portion indicates a change in the device, the individual identification for that device. Okay, and whenever you see there's a change in the network, then there's a line over here, some segregation. So the network portions, guys, give the identity for the entire network. Okay, so this here is the entire 192.168.0 network, the group of network. Group, a network is nothing but a group or a collection of IPs or devices, right? And in this network, this is the first device or the first host. This is the second host, the third host, the fourth host. As such, you can connect a maximum of 255 hosts. When the network portion changes from 0 to 1, the network divides over there, which means this is the last IP for that network. And here a new network begins. Okay. Now, whenever there's a different network, two different networks can't communicate with each other unless and until you have something called a router in between, they can't. Okay. So even if you bring a device like 1.2, and if you connect it physically in this network, it still cannot communicate with the other devices because the network portion is different from all the others, right? So again, network portion gives the identity for the entire network. Host portion gives the identity for that individual host in that network. So this is the first host in the 192.168.0 network. This is the second host in the 192.168.0 network. This is the third host in the same network, fourth host in the same network. Like that, each host portion represents a unique host or a unique device in the network. And the network portion is to identify or give a name for the entire network, the identity for the entire network. Okay, that's what network and host portions are. Okay, so network portion is to give identity for the entire network. Host portion to give identity for that individual host in that network. Okay, so in a similar fashion, in each Class C network, you can now connect only a maximum of 255 IPs, not more than that. Okay, actually 256 if you include zero as well, but we never assign 0 and 255 to any devices. So the only usable IPs are 254. Okay, but just to round it up, let's assume that in each network in Class C, we can connect a maximum of 255 devices, not more than that. Okay. Now this is very suitable for small networks, home networks, small organization networks, etc., etc. They use Class C. That's why in my home network also I'm using a Class C private IP itself. Okay. Now moving on to Class B. So let's say in an organization there's a requirement for connecting more than 255 devices. Then you have to go to the next class. Okay. In Class B, now you have two network portions and two host portions. So class B private IP starts at 172.16.0.0 and goes up to 172.31.255.255. So the first two octets here are the network portions. Last two octets are the host portions. So again, same logic. After 00, you have 01, 02, 03, 04. Goes all the way up to 0255. Now, after 0255, we have 10. But unlike class C, where 10 is being divided in a different network, here it still belongs to the same network because only the first two portions are the network portions. So as long as 172.16 is same, they're still belonging to the same network. So 0255 can now freely communicate with 10. There should not be any issue with that. Okay. Then you have 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, which goes up to 1255. Then you have 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, which goes up to 2255. Like that, it goes on and on and on. And somewhere down the line, you would have 2550, 2551, 2552, 2553, which goes up to 255, 255. Now, once both these octets are filled, what happens then? then 16 changes to 17. And whenever there's a change in the network portion, the network divides over there. Okay, so all the IPs now from 172.16.0.0 all the way up to 16.255.255 belong in one single network. Okay, and when it changes to 17, the network changes there. So from 17.00 to 17.255.255, that's the next network. 18.00 to 18.255.255, that's the next network. 19.00 to 19.255.255, that's the next network. Similarly, so in each network now, since you have two host octets, okay, so there are two host portions here. So therefore, in each class B network now, we can connect a maximum of 255 into 255 devices. Okay, so here are the first 255 devices, if you notice, 00 to 0255, then the next 255 devices, okay, then the next 255 devices, like that. So for every change in the third octet, you have 255 devices, and the third octet can change 255 times. So 255 into 255. Okay, that's the entire class B network. Okay, and finally, when you come to class A has one network portion and three host portions. And the entire class A ranges from 10.0.0.0 to 10.255.255.255. So all the IPs from 10.0.0.0 to 10.255.255.255 belong in one single network itself. So the entire class A private IP range is one single network, one of the largest networks, I would say. So from 10.0.0.0 all the way up to 10.255.255.255, you have one single network. And in this one single network, you can connect a maximum of 255 into 255 into 255 IPs, which is a very large network. Okay, logically speaking, this is possible. Practically not, it would have latency issues and all. Okay, but yeah, this is the purpose of each class. Okay. Class C can be used for small size networks, home networks, small organization networks. There you go for class C. Class B and Class A can be used for larger networks, multinational companies, ISP networks. All those organizations go for Class B and Class A private IPs. Okay. Now you might have a question, what about Class D and Class E? Those public IPs are special public IPs, guys. They are not given for your internet access. For our internet access, we only have Class A, B, C public IPs. Class D and Class E are reserved specifically for special organizations, research and development, military organizations, weather forecasting services, government portals, okay, special government agencies, FBI, CIA, RAW, ISI, whatnot. All of these organizations go for Class D and Class E public IPs. Okay, they're not given to us for our internet access. Okay, they're for special organizations. Okay, that's the classification of all the five classes. Okay, where do we use each class and what's the purpose of each class? Any questions, any doubts up to this point, guys? Aman, Kazi, Ravi, Venkat, Sudhir, Venu, Varlakshmi. Yeah, Varlakshmi, you were saying something. You can actually. It's in your entire control, Lakshmi. So if you want to use Class A in home networks, you can use Class A as well. That shouldn't be a problem. But there is no necessity for those many devices, right? So thumb rule is you always prefer a network which is according to your network size. Right. Yeah, you can use IPv6 addresses as well, or you can get a Class A private IP as well. As mentioned, private IPs are in your entire control. So you can use any range of those. But in IPv6, you don't have classes, Lakshmi. What do you mean by Class A IPv6? Yeah, you can do one thing. You can just drop a picture of your IP config command. I can look at it and I can let you know like what the IP address you're getting is, whether it's Class A or whether it's Class B, C, or a completely different IPv6 address. Okay. Yeah. But again, in IPv6 addresses, you do not have classes at all. There's only, again, there's groups. They are definitely groups, link local group, and etc., but no classes. Okay. When you talk about classes, these are only specific to IPv4 addresses, guys. Okay. Don't worry, we'll discuss about IPv6 as well at a later stage. I do not want to confuse you already because that's a completely different range of IPs. It's a hexadecimal address compared to IPv4, which is binary addresses. IPv6 is hexadecimal. I'll cover that when we talk about MAC addresses. Yeah. So we'll cover that. Right. No, just send me a screenshot of it. Actually, I'll look into it. Yeah, okay. Sure. So yeah, that's that, guys. Nothing further. We'll conclude over here for today. I'm a bit sick, so I'm taking a slightly shorter session today. I was supposed to cover subnet mask also. I was supposed to cover how do you assign a private IP, how do you get it manually from the control panel, and how do you get it automatically from a DHCP server. But yeah, I'll leave this for tomorrow. We'll cover all this in the next session, guys. Tomorrow will be the last class for networking fundamentals. I'll cover all this in the next session. Okay. So that's that. Nothing further. We can exit the session here. Please do join the session tomorrow at the same time. We'll be completing the entire networking fundamentals topic. Okay. Bye bye. Good day. See you tomorrow, guys.